Good morning. We have made it back through another week, Friday. I hope you're all staying positive. I know it's been a really turbulent week and it's such a roller coaster for so many people. And I know definitely I've definitely experienced some of the highs and lows of what's going on in life right now. I've just had my daughter went off to university, but she's actually heading back home today because she doesn't want to get locked down because cases are growing where she's at university. So that's kind of a setback for us, but you've got to do what you've got to do. And this morning's subject is something that's really important to me, and I think it's something that we really need to discuss now more than ever, is the important issue around surrounding mental health. And today's guest, I had the pleasure of meeting Miranda Arieh on the Voice BBC Radio Leeds competition. We both entered it last year and we met and connected. And so I am delighted today for Miranda to come and share her story and her role as an NHS Mental Health leader and all the great work she does around being a mental health activist. So let's join Miranda. Good morning, lovely.
Hey, how are you doing?
Oh, great, thank you. Thank you so much for joining me. And who knew when we met last year on the Radio Leeds competition that we'd be having these conversations now? It's fantastic.
It's amazing. It's so great. It's so lovely to connect. And we met outside as well, didn't we? Before we even went into the studio. Yeah. You were like stood on your own and I was like really nervous. And I remember having you before we even went in. Yeah. So
I was stood talking to my husband on the phone saying, I don't want to go in, I don't know anybody. And you were stood talking to your boyfriend saying, oh, I'm really nervous. I was like, right, okay, we've got to go in together. So for people that don't know your role, you work in the Leeds area, you're a local lady, I like to support a bit of local. And how would you describe what you do?
So what I'm currently working on is my role is within the NHS. I'm working across 11 different GP practices. I'm the network mental health lead. So I'm developing brand new mental health services for patients from 11 different GP practices. And this week I've actually just started doing group work. So I'm doing introductions to group work. I'm doing self-compassion courses. I'm doing mindfulness courses, confidence building. So I'm sort of infiltrating that kind of traditionally medical model of mental health treatment with a holistic approach through all the teachings that I've learned that help me with my own recovery. So it's been really, really remarkable work and getting some really good outcomes so far.
Well, it's amazing. And you are really honest about, your own experience. But for those that don't know, can you kind of briefly summarize what you went through to get to where you are now?
Yeah, well, when I was younger, I suffered a lot with my own mental health, like especially when I was a teenager, which also actually led me to being sectioned under the Mental Health Act at the age of 14. I lived in a mental health hospital, an adolescent psychiatric ward, for 9 months at the age of 14 before going into foster care. So I had a really tumultuous youth, suffer with my mental health a lot, but it really has just given me a massive passion for helping other people with mental health problems. And I've been on a long recovery journey myself, and I've done so much work on myself, wholly dedicated my life, especially since I hit the age of 30. I had experiences and wisdom that I just hadn't had in my sort of tumultuous 20s. I had my daughter young as well. So when I hit about 30, I'm 36 now. When I hit about 30, I started doing some really, really directed, hardcore work on myself, doing a lot of research and a lot of different approaches I used to sort of help me recover. And now I'm happy to say that I really do live in recovery, and I live in joy like 99% of the time, which is really amazing. Lots of joy, lots of energy. Whereas one point I was really suffering to even get motivation. I was really struggling. So yeah, it's just given me massive passion for mental health.
I mean, how fantastic that you've turned your experiences into some real positives. Well, I think we can all learn from that. And I think now more than ever, we were just briefly discussing it before we came live, now more than ever, people's mental health issues are so important. It affects so many people, doesn't it?
100%. Yeah. I mean, especially like with the lockdown, I mean, what I've seen in patients is, so obviously people who've got mental health problems have needed that extra support. But then what I am finding happening, because I was doing one-on-one consultations in lockdown because I wasn't able to run my groups, I was having people referred to me who had never struggled with their mental health in their whole entire life. And suddenly all this deep-rooted stuff had started coming up for them. They were isolated, they were low, they didn't have any meaningful use of time. And these things that a lot of us overlook, really build positive mental health, you know. And I think it's really important to have gratitude for these things, you know, that some people can take for granted, you know, having connections as friends, you know, because for some people they don't have those kind of connections, and people really suffer when they're not connecting with other people. And that's something we've found, the separation of people, you know, especially people who live on their own. It's been really devastating for their mental health.
Yeah, and I think actually, I mean, from my experience so far of the university situation, I think it's going to affect so many younger people because they are suddenly isolated and very difficult to make friends because there's nothing going on socially. There's no clubs going on. I know a lot of them are now in lockdown because somebody in their flat's got COVID. I think we are going to see a massive surge and demand for more services in the mental health service, in the service area, which I'm guessing is really underfunded and struggling as it is.
Yes, unfortunately, yeah. It just seems a bit crazy that so many cuts have been made to mental health services when it needs to be the most important place to be applying funding. Because even if we're talking about saving lives, you know, of course, physical health care is really paramount importance, but mental health has been in the shadows regarding funding, and cuts have been put on it when, you know, actually we're living in a society where under 45, the highest cause of death is suicide, you know, and we need to start implementing something to save lives. We're living in a suicide epidemic. There's people suffering without being able to reach out. We need to do a lot more outreach.
Do you think we're getting better as a society about talking more openly about our mental health, or do you still think there's a stigma attached to it?
I think we're doing a lot better, and it has really, really helped. You know, the more people, I've seen a lot more people start talking about their own mental health on social media. You know, I do think we've got a lot further to go. I really, really do. And I think that we've got a lot further to go, especially when stigma is attached to other mental health conditions. So a lot of people speak out about depression and anxiety, you know, PTSD. Like I was diagnosed with complex PTSD. So, but then there's other mental health problems that are a lot more stigmatized, which need to be brought to the light more, like borderline personality disorder. You know, it's such a stigmatized illness, and so many people who have that are just suffering so much. But because of the label of it, emotionally unstable personality disorder or borderline personality disorder, because of this label, I feel like people are stigmatized, and actually they're people who are in immense suffering, who've gone through great hardships, and that's basically what's going on for them. But so some labels, so they've had to like alter some labels like manic depression to bipolar. I feel like we're in a phase where I personally want to do a lot of campaigning, especially around borderline personality disorder, to try and approach even maybe being able to get a name change in the process. I was thinking of doing maybe a change.org petition, maybe starting next year, and doing a lot more work around that. But yeah, of course, you know, it's not easy to just speak out and go, I'm not feeling okay at the moment, but it's a very, very powerful process to you know, reach out and be vulnerable. It's paramount importance to take that risk and verbalize how you're feeling.
And you have, as you said briefly at the beginning, you have now worked with the NHS in a more holistic approach, which seems to me a little bit more accessible for people to be able to try and help themselves, as well as working with people like yourself. So how does that approach look like? What was the framework like?
Well, basically, the core foundation of everything that I'm doing within the groups with my patients, the core foundation of it is getting patients to build a relationship with themselves. So, because my belief is that if we have a strong, solid relationship with ourselves, especially as women, actually, the women's work is really, really interesting me at the moment. And if we have a strong relationship with ourselves, our feelings about ourselves are good. You know, we're clear in our decisions. We have implemented clear boundaries. We're comfortable about being assertive, etc., etc. We're kind to ourselves. You know, we've recognized that in a dialogue that can be kind of self-critical. If we have that as a foundation, everything else falls into place. And I think it's something that has been so overlooked in the mental health system for so long. It's such a simple process to guide people through, but instead they're given medication. They're told to, you know, just focus on your breath, you know, and to manage anxiety. But actually the core, that's like, to me, I always use an analogy to my patients. It's like pulling out the weed, but leaving the root. Because you're telling them, great, manage symptoms in the meantime, fantastic, you know, focus on your breath, etc. You know, it can really, really help. Focus on this, but actually we need to be doing something really down, you know, at the core beneath the soil foundation needs to be building our relationship with ourselves. And my belief is that all starts with self-compassion, and a real gentle approach to our attitudes toward ourselves, and really recognizing what's going on in our heads, because we all have inner dialogue. I read an article the other day that says we have 70,000 thoughts a day. So they can either be tearing us down or building us up, you know, and for us to start to recognize, that's the first step. So that's the first step I take patients through, is for them just to recognize, not attack, judge, try and change how they're feeling about themselves, but just recognize, oh God, I've just called myself an idiot for like the 10th time today, or, you know, just witnessing what's going on, and guiding people through that gentle process of building their relationship with themselves. It's so powerful. It's so powerful, you know, it really, really is remarkable to sort of witness people's journeys in that way.
And I guess, you know, the way you say it is sounds so simple, but actually that's such a hard thing for some people to do, isn't it? How do they take those? What advice could you give to people that are struggling, that need some advice and need to come and talk to somebody like you, but are so scared to even take that first step?
You know what? I'd say that being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. And so about feeling the fear, and not just feel the fear, do it anyway, but you know, feeling that fear and having the acknowledgement that by sharing, it's not you being weak. Because I think we have this sort of, humans live in a bit of insanity, because we can feel like, oh, if I share how I'm not doing well, it's weakness, it's perceived weakness. I perceive myself as weak, which means that everyone else perceives me as weak. Actually, if you're scared of doing it, if you do it, that's ultimate bravery. It's ultimate strength. You know, Brené Brown wrote a remarkable book. I don't know if have you heard Brené Brown?
Yeah, she's brilliant. I love her. Yeah,
phenomenal.
She's amazing.
Yeah, she wrote a book and did a TED Talk, The Power of Vulnerability. And it's just so true that if we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, there's a real shift, there's a real transformation that can happen then. So I'd say just really go for it. And, you know, like you said, Rachel, it's really difficult for some people to start, you know, that process of being kinder to themselves. You know, I have people in my groups that are just like, I can't say anything nice about myself. I'm asking them words to define themselves, and they're just like, well, you know, I'm stupid, I'm this, I'm that. And, you know, and to allow that, and allow that that's okay. That's what I felt like 10 years ago. Do you know what I mean? But I have the knowledge that we can change, and it just takes discipline. We don't go to the gym and expect to build massive biceps like Arnie Schwarzenegger after one session. It's about practice. It's about every time you hear that voice, being gentle, being kind, and speaking to yourself as though you would do a friend, holding yourself, you know, building that relationship with ourselves. Because if we're solid with ourselves, we're with ourselves through everything. We spend all our time with us. So the most important relationship we're ever going to have is the one we have with ourselves. So to work on that over all else is work you will never regret. You know,
that's so true. And you are, honestly, you're such an inspiration, Miranda. So Siobhan Daniels has just said, she left a comment saying, what a great positive woman. It's great to see all she's doing for mental health using her own experience as a platform. And it absolutely is. When you look back now at how far you've come to where you are now, what's the thing that surprises you the most about your journey and everything that you've achieved?
What surprises me the most? Just that I never ever thought I would have faith, and I never thought I'd get to a place where I was able to believe in myself. And I remember even having these like conversations and thoughts that I was told at a young age that recovery wasn't possible because of my childhood, or that I would always, you're always going to have these, you need to just learn to manage the symptoms. I wasn't told recovery was possible. And so what really surprises me is that I managed somehow to do the work, and I managed to find faith. And I think that that's what a lot of people with mental health struggles are missing, that hope. It's hope. If we can latch on to even 0.001% glimmer of hope or light within us when everything else feels dark, that is the bit we need to focus on, and that is the bit we need to grow and nourish. You know, and I think that I was able to do that. Books really helped me. I just chowed down on audiobooks because I couldn't read physical copies, because I couldn't focus on any pages. I couldn't focus on any articles. And I started with Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now, and recognizing what's real in the moment and not, about being mindful. And then I just went on from there and did a lot of work. And I think that because the mental health system, I lived within the mental health system as a service user for so long. And it wasn't a recovery focused place at all. It was like I say, it was about survive, not thrive. It's about survival. It's about managing those symptoms. Like I said, keeping people out of hospital, keeping people well, keeping them, sedated enough or whatever, and actually I want to lead people on a journey of thriving, getting past that, absolutely thriving, shining their light kind of thing, and I think that, so all the services that I'm developing are all around being recovery focused, because I want to tell everyone that recovery is possible. It doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter if you're suicidal. It doesn't matter if you're suffering every day. It doesn't matter if you can't get out of bed. Recovery is possible, and to make sure you keep that in your head at all times, even when you're suffering, to know that things can get better, because they can. It doesn't matter your diagnosis.
And I mean, I can imagine now that the NHS, because they are being so inclusive with you and supportive of the work you're doing, does that mean there is being a real shift in the NHS to their approach on dealing with mental health issues?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there has been a massive shift for sure. And I'm really lucky because I've just got such an incredible boss, like the business manager at our surgery he's just so excited to implement something new, and he's just really encouraging about go with it. He just puts faith in me to just go with my own expertise, my own experience, and to just develop what I want really, which has just been absolutely incredible. I've been very, very, very lucky to have that opportunity, but I think a lot more people are getting, starting to recognize that we've got very old-fashioned ideas when it comes to medication. We've got very barbaric old ideas when it comes to stuff like psychiatry and even some therapy. It's very outdated. These are courses that are being taught that got developed 50 years ago. Things have changed since then, and a lot of these therapeutic services, they need to have a bit of a shift, and I think that is happening a lot more. There is a big buzz around mindfulness in the NHS and mental health treatment at the moment, which is really remarkable, because that's showing that something's coming through that's less cold approach. It's holistic, but I believe everything needs to be very holistic. There's a purpose for medication, of course. It's very important for some people to take medication. It saves lives. However, for a lot of people, they might not actually need it, and they might have been under that chemical cosh for 20 years, when actually they have the strength to be able to deal with their issues in a more holistic way.
Do you think we need to start this approach at a very early age? So do you think it's something that we should be even looking at more, introducing in schools?
100%.
Yeah.
Oh God, absolutely. I really want to do more work in schools. I really want to go into schools and do talks on self-compassion. I think, kids have sexual health, sex education lessons. I think there needs to be something like that for mental health, emotional well-being. I think it should be part of the curriculum. It needs to be part of the curriculum. There needs to be a conversation started at a very young age to prevent people getting so poorly, especially in teenage years, because I struggled so much, and we've got the hormones fired up as well, and it's 100%. It needs to start primary school, I would say.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I can relate to that. My eldest daughter really suffered with acute anxiety and agoraphobia when she hit her teenage years, and ended up going through the CAMS system and being homeschooled. And it's such a vulnerable age. But also it's about educating the people, those around them, to use the right language and to drop that stigma. And if it was taught in schools at a much earlier age, there wouldn't be that issue. It would be, those barriers would be broken down, wouldn't they?
Absolutely. Yeah, because I think that a lot of the time, even if someone gets helper's syndrome, it's not easy for them to talk about it. It's not easy to start that conversation with their friends and stuff. But actually, probably at least 50% of kids are suffering with their mental health at school, because it's all those hormones, like you say, and like the anxiety. It's a very anxious age, isn't it? Because kids become very self-conscious, and they're in very busy environments every day in school. So it's like you say, it's about normalizing, mental health struggles, and knowing that we can support each other through them as well. Yeah.
If you know somebody that is struggling, I think often people find it uncomfortable and don't know the right words to say to somebody that they know is struggling. So what advice could you give to somebody if you've got a friend, but you don't know how to approach the conversation, and what are the right things and the wrong things to say to somebody?
I'd certainly say, for a start, I think that as human beings, we can have a very rescuer mentality. And I think that the first thing we need to let go of before we even broach that conversation with someone who might be suffering, we need to let go of the thought of, I need to fix them. It's my responsibility to fix them. What can I do to make them better? We need to let go of that before we broach the conversation. Because if we're in that head state, we can't be there and we can't be mindful, because we're thinking more about us and for me, I need to make sure they're better. We need to let go of that, and we need to go, I'm here, I'm here for you to talk to. Be there. We can support them. Advice giving, I don't always find that useful. I don't think it works, actually. I think what really, really works is speaking from the I. So if we've got a friend that's struggling, the more we can sort of relate it to our own experiences and go, I felt that before. I recognize that. I'm sorry you're suffering. I'm here for you. And if it's something that we haven't experienced, that's okay too. We can still just be there and just be a rock. Check in with them. But also do not take responsibility for their feelings, because that won't help them. But also, it's very, very important to not feed a victim complex, because sometimes when people get very, very unwell emotionally, it can become a very poor little me. This has happened when I was a child, or this has happened. I've been there in the past. It didn't help me being in that victim complex. I'm never going to get over this. This is so bad. We can support someone to come out of that victim complex, and we can bring them back to the present. We can support them to come back into the present moment, recognizing they're an adult in the present day. Sometimes even just if someone's really, really suffering, bringing them back to the room around them, going, pointing out things in the room if someone's in immense panic can be really, really helpful. But yeah, making sure we don't feed the victim complex. We don't just go, oh God, that's so awful. So it's a balance of recognizing the suffering. Suffering needs to be recognized. We need people around us to recognize our suffering. Wow, that sounds hard. That sounds so intense. I've had feelings like that before, and it's been so painful. The empathy. It's important to recognize suffering, but balancing it with not victimizing them. Oh, that's awful. That just we don't want to go down that rabbit hole. Again, I'm going to just pull on Brené Brown for 1 second there. She has a beautiful analogy about empathy. That empathy is not about jumping down to the bottom of the well with someone and going down there with them. It's about reaching the hand down. So to stay mindful yourself and present yourself and just reach out, be there.
Yeah, that's so good. And that's Jeff. I mean, she is fantastic. But if you could do anything, if you could achieve anything now, what's your kind of main goal? Because I'm guessing you've got a long list of things that you really want to achieve, but what's your kind of main focus?
What I really, really want to do is I've started writing a book, which is really exciting. It just happened organically. I was just writing up some ideas, and I started just I've written about 30 pages so far. So I'm being like, on with the book. I really want to release this book next year. I want it to be like a guidebook for building our relationship with ourselves, talking about dealing with past pain, especially, and trauma. And I want to do more public speaking. I want to do more talks at schools, especially. I want to do speaking with staff teams, schools. And I'd also really like to maybe start doing one-on-one coaching again as well.
You definitely need to do more speaking, because you're so good and you come across so well. You're a real inspiration, Miranda. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. How can people find out about your services?
So if I'm on Facebook and Instagram. So if you just type in my name, so I'm Miranda Arieh Music on Facebook, because I'm also a singer-songwriter. So I share my music and mental health stuff on there. And then on Instagram and Twitter, I'm Miranda Arieh as well. Yeah. So just tune in and get in touch.
I'm going to ask you one final question that I'm starting to ask all my guests now, because I think particularly women are really bad at complimenting themselves and accepting compliments. If you could give yourself one compliment, what would it be?
My compliment for myself would be that I'm really kind and I really get so much joy out of helping other people. And I think that's a really beautiful trait that we all have within us. And it's really nice to sort of grow that inside us. And I really, I know the way it makes me feel when I'm supporting someone with mental health problems. it gives me so much joy in my heart. So I would say, yeah, kind, and kindness is something that's just, it's a big compliment if someone calls you kind, I think.
Well, so lovely, Miranda, and it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you this morning. You're just such an inspiration, and keep doing what you're doing, because it's a fantastic.
You are such an inspiration. You are so inspirational. I've told all my friends about you, and they're all. I'm just like, you've got to follow Rachel Peru. She's amazing. Yeah, so you're such an inspiration to me and so many others all over the world, probably. So yeah, thanks for having me, Rachel. Such an
absolute pleasure, and keep doing all the great work you're doing. So yeah, let's keep in touch. Lovely.
Thank you. To see you.
Enjoy the weekend. Thank you.
Have a gorgeous weekend, everyone.
Thank you. Well, what an inspiration. And, the fact that she's gone through so much herself and then come out the other end with some real positive impact on the mental health service. And, I could advise anybody that might be struggling to get a friend to watch this, because I think, there's so much information in there. And I think the work that Miranda's doing is amazing. So take care of yourselves. I hope you all can stay positive this week and enjoy the weekend and get out, get some fresh air. And I'll be back next week.